Lehigh County is located in the Lehigh Valley region of the eastern part of Pennsylvania. In the early 1970s, Lehigh County boasted a population of over 250,000 people, mostly dispersed through the adjoining cities of Allentown and Bethlehem. At this time, the county was mainly of the industrial persuasion. The Bethlehem Steel was one of the foremost producers of steel in the world earlier in the century, and in the 1970s was still going strong. When Hurricane Agnes struck in 1972, Lehigh County fared far better than some of its neighbor counties to the north. Some areas, such as Wilkes-Barre and Luzerne County and Reading and Berks County, were devastated or severely damaged by the torrential rains and flooding brought on by the storm. Lehigh County's population centers of Allentown and Bethlehem, however, stood on generally high enough ground that the flooding was manageable. The benign effects of the storm on Lehigh County were also partially abated by the construction of the Francis E. Walter Dam in 1961 by the Army Corps of Engineers. The dam was designed and built to control the annual flooding of the Lehigh and greatly helped control the flow of Lehigh during the Agnes. This is not to say that Lehigh County escaped all damage from Hurricane Agnes. During the storm, the Lehigh River crested at 20.02 feet near Bethlehem, PA, and the Jordan Creek, one of the major tributaries to the Lehigh in the area, crested at 11.61 feet. Although there were no deaths directly linked to the flooding, there was much damage done to homes and businesses in low-lying areas near the river. Another factor was the numerous bridges and roads that were closed or destroyed due to the flooding. A number of railroad lines were also closed. The brunt of the burden that Agnes placed on Lehigh County was felt by the industrial sector. Bethlehem Steel sits on a flat parcel of land directly next to the river and is only about 5 feet above its average water height. The floodwaters covered the factory buildings to the second story and destroyed many of the workshops and offices located on the ground floor. The steel suffered another major blow when the hurricane caused the flooding of the Cornwall iron mines, which had been in operation for over 230 years and provided a good portion of the ore used by the steel. The damage to these mines was severe, and the mines could not be drained and reopened after the floodwaters receded. Another industrial powerhouse, the Pennsylvania Power and Light Corporation, was also affected by Agnes. In 1972, PP&L was working on plans to build its first power plant using a nuclear reactor. When Agnes struck, the company was forced to turn its attention to damage control. At the height of the storm, about 130,000 customers were without power. Generating plants, substations, distribution networks were under as much as 17 feet of water, causing a total of $11 million in damage to company facilities and equipment.
The Luzerne County is a part of the city of Wilkes-Barre, which was heavily affected by the Hurricane Agnes in the year 1972. Because of the torrential rainfalls during the hurricane and due to the geographical position of the city and its counties, the water bodies in the county and the city swelled up to flood the surrounding areas. This included Harvey's Lake in the county of Luzerne and the Susquehanna River by Wilkes-Barre. The river swelled up to 40.9 feet, which is 18.9 feet above the flood stage, breaking the previous record of flood height of 33 feet. Emergency relief from all across the country was required to help in the evacuation of people from their respective homes or shops. Even though the dikes were sandbagged, no one had anticipated the floods to be as disastrous as they were. Penn State's Wilkes-Barre campus was one of the places where the floods could not reach, and so it was converted into a refuge area and one of the information centers for the flood. People from far and near were evacuated from their respective homes and were transferred to Penn State Wilkes-Barre, where they stayed till the hurricane passed away, and it was safe for them to go back to their homes, or at least what was left of it. people from Penn State, students and teachers, did whatever they can to help propagate the information about floods and the weather conditions to the people from the surrounding areas that were not yet affected by the floods but were going to be affected in the near future. They also helped in the evacuation process of the surrounding areas. The Luzerne County Courthouse was another place that was to remain untouched by the floods, and it was the control center of the Navy personnel that were helping out with the process of evacuation of the surrounding areas. Amidst all of this, the NBC and the post offices managed to reach out to the people with their news from the affected areas. The area being the most heavily affected areas endured a loss of lives of 6 people, 25,000 homes and businesses, and $1 billion. After the floods, Senator Daniel J. Flood and President Nixon visited the area. In the aftermath of the floods, there was a huge demand for architects, engineers, and surveyors to rebuild the city and to reinforce the dams and the dikes to avert future disasters of such kind. In this picture, one can see that in the process of rebuilding the city, it was modernized in its appearance. Even though the whole city was restructured and its defenses against natural disasters of this magnitude were reinforced, they were of no good as the city was flooded again in the year 2011, and this time it was because of the tropical storm Lee.
Was your house affected by the flood of Agnes?
No, I lived in Avoca by the airport on top of a hill, so we never used to get flooded or get any water. But I remember it was the beginning of school vacation. I was 12 years old, and it rained for over 30 days, and we couldn't go out. We were stuck on the porch, and it just poured, and it was dark and gloomy.
Was any of your friends or family's houses affected by this flood?
Not their houses, but my friends used to go up to the airport to help get goods for all the people who lost everything. They used to store everything up there. And I had friends from Duryea who had to move out of their homes because the Lackawanna River overflowed.
What was your most memorable experience of this flood?
We went down to Pittston, and we were on William Street, and it was small, and I could see the river coming up over the banks.
Schuylkill County, being the heart of the coal region of Pennsylvania, has its communities centered in lowlands near the two main resources that are necessary for the industry, the mines themselves and running water. The distribution of towns as such aided to the disastrous effects when Hurricane Agnes came through in 19... Schuylkill County was not ready for Hurricane Agnes, though it may not have been possible to be ready for a storm of such scale. But it caught everyone by surprise because of it coming in June, which is unusual for a hurricane. Because of it being a lower category hurricane, much of the damages were not done by wind, but rather the rain that accompanied it. The dangers of flooding wasn't realized immediately because of the strength of the storm was not instantly intimidating. There was just a constant manageable gust of wind and constant rain. By the third day of rain, most of the local creeks and streams were overflowing, which made vehicle transportation impossible. This was due in part by many of the roads follow near many of the local streams and Schuylkill County River, which the flooding put many of them underwater. Towns like Schuylkill Haven had designated floodplains that were used in an attempt to isolate the damage done. In these areas there was standing water as deep as 5 feet. Everyone who lived in these areas were evacuated by the local police and fire companies. Flooding became so bad that the police in the area used small boats to patrol and evacuate people in need. Wherever the floodwaters went, so did the dirt and debris it carried with it, causing additional damage and blocking storm drains. Local businesses tried their best to protect themselves from the flood by using sandbags and moving valuables to upper floors. In the end, the Army Corps of Engineers estimated flood damages at $5.5 million. With inflation today, it would equal more than $30 million.
On March 11, 1752, Chester, Lancaster, and Philadelphia counties gave up land to become the beautiful Berks County. Berks County currently houses 411,000 people, with 81,000 of those people living in the city of Reading alone. Despite Reading and most of its surrounding areas being beautiful, Reading is one of the most impoverished cities in the United States of America. When Hurricane Agnes struck Berks County in 1972, residents were left in shock. The city of Reading was flooded over by the Schuylkill River. The flood brought water levels to a new record of 31.3 feet in the city of Reading, while destroying over 100 homes. In some places, entire city blocks were underwater, while train cars floated down the street. Hundreds of people were evacuated from their homes because the sewer system could just simply not handle the amount of water that was being forced into it. Hurricane Agnes was very destructive to Berks County, leaving many people out of homes and some without their lives. Needless to say, this natural disaster is one of the worst that Berks County has ever seen.